Hello, my name is Alex and welcome to my channel. In my previous videos I've been talking about Ableton Live basics like its user interface and settings. So if you missed those videos, I recommend watching them as well. And like I said, it was about time to move forward towards the actual workflow, production and engineering. So let's start from Ableton Live track types and basic signal flow. Ableton Live has 5 different types of tracks that fall into 2 groups. The first group is the audio tracks group, and it has 2 types of tracks: audio tracks and MIDI tracks. These tracks are fundamental for any project because they are the only tracks that can work with sound sources. And they are different because the sound sources are different. To add any of these tracks to your project, right-click anywhere in Clip Device Drop area if you are in the session view, or in the Mixer Drop area if you are in Arrangement view, and choose Insert Audio Track or Insert MIDI Track. Now let's talk about these tracks in a little more detail. Audio tracks are designed to work with any pre-recorded samples that you can input directly into the track. And then you can do anything with these samples. You can cut, you can chop, you can apply fades, you can shorten, you can expand and so on directly on the samples. So what are audio tracks ideal for? Number 1 is track comping. So if you recorded yourself singing or playing an instrument, you'll end up with several takes which you'll need to combine together into one final track. And audio tracks are your best friends for this task. Number 2 is diversity. You can easily have 2 or more identical copies of the same sample side by side within one track, but with completely different edits. And this allows you to actually use the same sample several times and make it so that nobody will ever notice it. And number 3 is positioning. So if you have a sample of some audio effect like a riser or impact and need to precisely position it against other tracks, audio tracks are also ideal for it. And you can input a sample into an audio track and then move it anywhere you need with great precision. As for limitations, I can think of 3 things. So the first one is changing samples might not be an easy thing. It's not a problem to change one sample in an audio track. Even changing the same repeating sample in a track with another one is not that big of a problem. The problem is if you have a mixture of samples within an audio track and want to change only part of them. In that case, be prepared to handpick the ones you need to replace, which might just take more time than you expect. Now, the second thing is pitching audio samples dynamically is not an easy thing either. So yes, you can pitch a sample to a certain frequency, but if you need to end up with a melody, you'll have to process every single sample one by one. And if at some point you decide to change the key of the song, you'll have to do it all over again. And the last one here is you cannot play more than one sample in one track at the same time. So if you have a sample of an instrument and want to make a chord out of it, or if you want to keep that echoing tail of a sample overlapping another one, you'll need additional audio tracks for this purpose. So long story short, if you recorded your cat making a funny sound and now want to make a singing choir of cats, or if after long hours doing it you decide to replace a choir of cats with a choir of dogs, you better consider another track type right from the start, which is MIDI tracks. MIDI tracks are different in a way that the sound sources for MIDI tracks are virtual instruments. Instead of working with the audio directly, MIDI deals with MIDI commands or programs. These commands are stored in MIDI clips that can also be easily edited just in a different way. You edit not audio samples, but the notes played, and this yields a lot of benefits. Number 1, easy ideas capturing and editing. In my first video I mentioned MIDI controllers. They are great to have in the studio for quick ideas capturing, but they typically don't contain any audio on board. You don't transfer any audio while playing or recording it. You are just telling a virtual instrument in your DAW to play specific notes for specific length and specific velocity or pressure. And after you've finished recording, you'll get a MIDI clip with all the keys you played, not as an audio, but as the list of notes on a piano roll. And you can easily fix anything in this recording. Add or remove some notes, quantize everything to the grid so that the instrument plays perfectly to the beat, adjust volume when and where needed, and so on. The next one is easy instrument swapping. Imagine you've got a great take on a piano and then someone says, "Wow, that would be even better with an electric guitar." With audio, the only way to make it happen is via re-recording. With MIDI, it's just a question of minutes, and most of this time you'll spend finding the right guitar sound among the ones you have. Yes, you can even try that Funny Cat sample and see if it works. The final one is small size. MIDI clips can be exported from or imported into any DAW, and they have their own file format, which is extremely lightweight. For that reason, you can easily exchange these files with other producers even via email. And there are even MIDI packs in existence that have prepared chord progressions for easy ideas generation. The second group of tracks can be called Routine Tracks group, and it has three types of tracks: group tracks, return tracks, and master track. These tracks do not contain any audio sources. They can only get the signal from somewhere and pass it over to another track or external devices. They play a big role in audio routing and serve different purposes, so let's talk about that in more detail. Group tracks can only be used with audio and MIDI tracks. So basically you can take any number of audio and MIDI tracks in any combination and group them. You can even group them further into subgroups, but you cannot put a track in more than one group on the same grouping level. To make a group, you need to select required tracks, right-click on one of them and then click on Group Tracks. Why would you need it? Several reasons. Number one, structuring. With groups, you can structure your project so that it becomes easier to navigate. It also becomes easier to monitor audio in multiple tracks at once, since each group has its own gain control and mute solo buttons. Finally, any track in Ableton Live, including group tracks, can be folded to take less space. So you can easily clean up screen space when needed. Number two is group processing. This one is easy. If you ever need to apply the same adjustment to several tracks, you can do it on a group level if they are all in the same group. It's not just faster, it takes less computer resources to process audio this way. And number three, group versus group processing. There are scenarios when you need to make sure the level of the whole group goes down to make room for some other track, or vice versa. The level of one track needs to go down because of the level of some other group of tracks. In both scenarios, group tracks is a solution. If you're familiar with other DAWs, return tracks act like auxiliary tracks or buses. They are similar to group tracks but work differently. And the first difference is that they can be added as separate tracks. They don't need any other tracks for it. The second difference is that they are designed for parallel signal processing, while groups can only work in series. And the third difference is that the number of return tracks is limited. To add a return track, you need to go to the same menu as with audio tracks and choose Insert Return Track. Actually, You'll have two return tracks by default, and their names are reverb and delay. And basically that's the idea behind these tracks. With their help you can apply resource-demanding effects to multiple tracks without overloading your computer CPU. You have full control over exactly how much of an effect you need on a track-by-track basis, including group tracks. Now, if you take a look at this side of the screen, you're gonna see three negative infinity indicators. Now, if you change them, that will also change the level of the signal going to the respective return track. So it means that you don't send 100% of your, for example, piano signal to a return track, but you choose how much exactly to send. While there is still a copy of piano remaining that does not go to a return track at all. This is what's called parallel processing, and this is the difference from groups, where you cannot control how much of a signal to send to a group. If you send it, you send all 100% there, which is serial processing. The last type of routing tracks is the master track, or if you are in Ableton Live 12, main track. This track has several differences from other tracks of this type. The first one is there is only one master track in the project. You can neither create additional master tracks nor delete the existing one. Next, unlike other 4-track types, you cannot rename master track. Its name always stays the same. And finally, this is the last step in the signal flow. Master track can receive signal from anywhere, but can only send it to an external devices like headphones or speakers. Apart from that, it works just like any other routing track in Ableton Live. Before we go to routing, I wanted to show you a simple chart with an overview of your computer's resources required for these tracks. Audio tracks will need a lot of RAM because you'll be dealing with uncompressed audio, and you'll need CPU only for any applied effects. MIDI tracks, depending on the virtual instrument, you'll need CPU or RAM or both. If you apply additional effects, more CPU will be needed. Grouping tracks, as they don't contain any sound sources, only CPU is required for any processing through effects. Finally, let's talk about signal flow. I will not be mentioning it every time, but keep in mind that at every track a signal may be processed via effects. It all starts from audio and MIDI tracks. You can group them, and if you do, they will automatically pass the signal to respecting group tracks. You can send signal from any of these tracks to any number of return tracks. And finally, signals from all these tracks sum up in a master track. And then, master track sends the signal to external devices. This is the default routing, which you can modify, of course, but we will talk about it in some other video. So I hope you've learned something new today about track types and routing in Ableton Live. My next video will be about digital audio characteristics, and I hope to see you all there. Don't miss it. Until then, take care, bye bye, see you!